Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, Professor Brunet. I'm profoundly grateful to the nominators and the Governing Council. Congratulations to the class of 2026. You know, I'm from Winnipeg, and if you aren't familiar with where that is, it's that geographic place in Canada where summer is defined as 2 weeks of bad skating in August. It's so remote that growing up in Winnipeg and studying there, I had no idea that University of Toronto Law School existed. I knew about that other place further north, but I did not know this place existed. And so when I applied to law schools, I kind of threw in an application to this other place, just in case, things went wrong at the other place up north. And then I was faced with this happy circumstance, which was that I was accepted at both law schools. And I did what I thought any law student would do, prospective law student would do, faced with that choice. I made an appointment to interview the dean. So sheepish at being grilled, the dean of that other place said, we'd love to have you in our faculty, but U of T is the toughest law school to get into in Canada. So you should take that into consideration. No one knows this in Winnipeg, I said. But I do thank him every day for his grace in directing me here. That encounter and this place changed my life forever. It was then and is now beyond dispute that Jackman Law is far and away the best law school in Canada and among the greatest in the planet Earth. It's also true that the Munk School and the School of Graduate Studies are also fantastic. If you're as lucky as I am, some of the classmates you've met here at U of T will be in your lives forever. And some of your professors too. You'll celebrate with them. Maybe you'll get to work with them. You may mourn with them. You'll laugh with them. And if you're truly lucky, like me, you'll fall in love with one of them and come to know the profound joy of raising kids together. I only practiced law for as long as it took to serve under articles. As Professor Brunet said, another intervention prevented me from returning to practice. Adrian Clarkson, not yet Canada's 26th Governor General, was taking the helm of the publishing house, McClelland and Stewart. We had met while I was a master's student in Paris, and she asked me a blunt question. Are you still planning to be a lawyer, or do you think you might want to do something interesting with your life? Much to my parents' dismay, I took a pay cut and joined her in publishing, and that led to an introduction to the publishing and film and television business in Canada and in the US and in Europe. And that led to a job at the CBC and then to a job at Atlantis Films and ultimately to a position at Microsoft, where I was asked to produce programming to encourage people to be on the internet, which I did. Sorry. And now I run my own film and television company. Is it really that far afield from the study of law? After all, law, like film, involves storytelling. We learn through the study of cases, which is really the reading of stories. It was Bluebell time in Kent, wrote Lord Denning in 1970. My classmate, Justice Sean Nakatsura, 45 years later wrote, when he pleaded guilty to the charges, I had no idea who Jesse Armitage was and why he did what he did. He's a large man, boyish in his face. He looks a lot younger than his years. This is terrific storytelling, and it's storytelling in the service of social justice. John Laskin wrote about pleadings. Counsel must carefully consider what story to tell and how to tell it. That's as true of legal pleadings as it is of writing and producing and of storytelling in general. And I think it's a clue to why so many graduates end up in this industry. When a friend of mine in Los Angeles sent me an impossible to finance script, I proposed importing a financing model from the cable television days for one of the first times into the studio feature film business. There's a global system of treaties, Canada is party to 52 of them, that allow nationals of treaty countries to produce films together to optimize financing. I knew from my study of international law how to interpret and apply these treaties. What I did not appreciate was how nearly impossible it would be to finance the first and only ever UK, Italy, South Africa co-production that would be Hotel Rwanda. Closing the deals around that film was like the highest pressure, 100% final take-home exam in which I was tested on every law school course and a lot of pre-law school courses I'd ever taken. Negotiating, banking law, insurance law, labor law, employment law, secured transactions. In fact, after weeks of 20-hour days, one final issue threatened to derail the entire deal, and it turned on an arcane principle of applicable law and jurisdiction. Now, I hadn't studied entertainment law, but I had taken a number of obscure courses, including Angela Swan's Conflict of Laws class, and that course served me in resolving that final issue at well past 2 a.m. one morning, and that movie got made. Years later, I still meet young people who studied Hotel Rwanda in school or watched it with their families, who tell me how significant an impact it had on their lives, motivating their decisions to become journalists or human rights advocates, or to study law or global affairs or public policy. Because story is what unites us and helps us contextualize and understand and project what is happening in the world. Working on David Cronenberg's elegiac film, The Shrouds, helped me come to terms with my father's passing just weeks before we went to camera. Watching Sarah Polley's brilliant Away From Her gave me insight into managing my mother's descent into dementia. And shooting Skidegemu Juegadik at the Place of Ghosts was an introduction for me to the Two-Spirit Mi'kmaq community in Nova Scotia. What we hear, and what we see, and what we read is our connection to our family, to our society, and to our world as Canadians and as humans. And it's not just the stories we experience, but how we experience them, I think, that defines us. Attending to narrative in groups is as uniquely a human social undertaking as there can be. Laughing, crying, singing, or being scared together in a theater or a cinema or a concert hall or a pub is a profoundly unifying act of civil society. It's not surprising then that the breakdown of civil society we see around us today arose with the twin technological developments of the atomization of audiences through the rise of streaming and the concomitant collapse of broadcast on the one hand, and the explosion of what's euphemistically termed social media on the other. You add to that the pandemic, and we all have to be vigilant, I think, not to accept the seduction of social media and the online world as a substitute for actual, real social interaction and civic engagement. As Jutta mentioned, for 2 decades I've served on the board of the Institute for Canadian Citizenship. I'm now the vice chair. It's an organization that seeks to drive social cohesion for new Canadians through culture. Recently, we produced an event in The Hague where a young doctoral student made his way through the crowd to find me. "You produced Hotel Rwanda," they say. "Yes, I did. Did you study it in school?" "No," he replied. "I'm from Kigali. My family is Tutsi. Only my sister and I survived the genocide. I came over here to thank you for telling our story." That was a reminder that story, both its telling and attending to its telling, is the lifeblood of civil society. I want to wish you all the delight and the power of story as you go forward from this place and wish you congratulations. Thank you.